This little mark right here on your front harmonic balancer is a very important reference mark that needs to be accurate. Now that little mark's primary purpose is to allow you to time the engine, find the ignition point so you can accurately time your engine. So this little trying to find top dead center is pertinent to two-piece harmonic balancers. So you know there's an inner piece that presses onto your crankshaft or bolts on, then there's a rubber sleeve, and then there's the outer piece to the harmonic balancer which contains your timing mark of some sort. Alright, so they do slip on a two-piece pulley, and occasionally you have to check them just to make sure they're spot on, and that way when you tune your engine and you go to set the ignition timing, you know it's accurate. Okay, so how do we go about checking top dead center? With the cylinder head on, engine in your car, there's only two choices available to you, and that's put a device like a little tool into the spark plug hole like this one. It's just a same thread as the spark plug. You screw it in, it's got an adjustable bolt on the outside, and you screw that into your number one spark plug hole, and the whole purpose of this tool is to stop the piston from reaching top dead center. So you crank the engine over until the piston hits the bolt, and then you mark a reference point on your pulley, then you crank the engine back around in reverse and wait for the piston to hit that bolt again, and then mark another point on your pulley, and the distance between those 2 points that you've marked will be exact top dead center, and hopefully it'll match exactly the current mark that's on your pulley. Now before you go screwing your spark plug stopping tool into the spark plug hole, make sure it's not on top dead center according to your pulley, because if you've got one welded up and you screw it in, you'll just bore a hole straight through your piston if the bolt is strong enough. So you need to give it some clearance. So we're going to take it back around about 30 degrees will be sufficient. Okay, so take it back about 30 crankshaft degrees from top dead center, and then we'll screw our spark plug tester into the hole. Now you'll need to make sure it's nipped up reasonably tight, because you don't want it to move during the test. Okay, we've got the spark plug tooling tight now. Now let's have a look at what's going on down here as I'm turning it over. If I made my spark plug top dead center tool properly, then it should stop me before I get the top dead center. Okay, and there it is. Okay, it's going to be much easier of course if you take all your spark plugs out to do this, because you're not going to have a bar like this more than likely attached to your engine. You may have to turn this over by hand using your fan belt to put pressure on the crankshaft as you're cranking it. But whatever method you're using to turn this engine over, do not force the crankshaft past the point where it feels like it's stopped. I could quite easily just keep turning this, and I could quite easily bend the bolt on my spark plug tool without any problem whatsoever. So you do not use a great amount of force, you just turn the engine over until you feel it stop, and that's it. Now let's mark our pulley. Okay, so there's our first mark. Now what we do is we simply turn the engine backwards, right around until the piston stops again. Now remember, if you haven't taken your rocker gear off, one valve is going to open during this process, and that's the danger of whether that one valve will clip your spark plug tool. Alright, so hopefully when we come up and stop, it's going to be the same distance on the other side of the top dead center mark, and there we have it. That is now stopped, and I will mark that position. Okay, so I've got one mark here, one mark there. Hopefully that is smack bang in the center of those two. So I'll need probably a pair of dividers to check that, and I'll just grab those and we'll see how close it is. Okay, we've got a really good look at this now. So what I'm going to do is put that little divider into there and go from my black mark right to the pointer as it currently sits. Hopefully that will be the same distance on the other side, so I'll go from the black mark back to the pointer, and you can see clearly it's not. So I have a small error in top dead center, probably by about 1 degree. That's not too bad, is it? Alright, so what we need to do is we can remark that mark over probably about half to 1 degree. Alright, so there's the mark there, there's the mark there, so in between that point and where my fingernail is true top dead centre. Now you could of course just compensate for that with your timing light, now that you know how much area you have, and Bob's your uncle, you won't have any dramas. Alright, but the chances are, if it's slipped now, it's going to slip more. Alright, so over the coming months or years, it has to just get worse. It's not going to get any better. So you're going to have to check top dead centre again and again every time you want to tune it. So every year you'll probably be checking your mark to make sure it's okay. Okay, that was your first method that you could use. It is fairly accurate, but the one point is that you have to be careful that you don't get valve interference when you're turning that engine backwards, and as I said before, the easiest way to alleviate that problem is to take your rocker off the number one cylinder when you're doing that. Alright, but if you haven't done that and you want to do a quick and nasty one, well then this method here is probably the quick and nasty way of doing it, and I think you could probably get it within 1 to 2 degrees anyway. So this is all about feel, this method, so you've got to get yourself some sort of a rod or a screwdriver with a long stem on it, because all we're going to do, we're going to put that rod into the spark plug hole and lever it up against the thread of the hole and the piston. So what will happen as the piston moves, let's say that's the spark plug hole right here, and the piston comes up, the end of the rod is going to move, alright? And all we're doing is then feeling the end of the rod. You'll have your finger at the end of the rod and you're feeling for any slight movement. Now if you fix your hand and lock it, you'll be able to feel very minute movement here. So if the piston moves about 1 thou and you've got a ratio on this lever 1 to 10, that'll give you 10 thou movement at the end of this rod when that end moves 1 thou. So the longer this rod the better, okay, but in a lot of cars, especially a V8, you're certainly not going to be able to put a 2-foot rod into the spark plug hole because there's just no room. In some six-cylinder engines, yeah, you can put quite a long rod in there. So that will depend on your engine situation and how much room you've got in the engine bay. In some engine bays you might only be able to get a rod that long in, which will make this quite difficult for you to feel that movement, but this is just a quick and dirty way of doing it. So let's see how close I can spot this as being out by using this rod. Now I promise I won't look at the pulley while I'm doing this. I'll look constantly at this lever and then we'll come down here and have a look and see how close I got it. Okay, I've turned the engine back to about 30 degrees before top dead centre. I'll put my little rod into the piston. Now it's going to come up, which means the end of the rod is going to go down, and it is. Now while you're doing this, be careful you do not jam this in there. Okay, it's quite easy to get it jammed, so just occasionally as it's still coming up, shift it so you don't have any possibility of jamming it in there. Still coming up, yep, so I'll shift it again now. Up, 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 oh, that looks like, see, there you go, exactly what I was talking about. I've got it sort of jammed in there, so that's no good. I'm glad that happened, just to show you that it happens to the best of us. Alright, so just be careful of that. Alright, so we're getting very close to top dead centre there, that's why it jammed up, so you need to pull that out a little bit more and create yourself a greater lever advantage so you can see any movement here. So we should be right now, and that coming up still, and now I feel nothing, almost. Yeah, okay, so now it's going down. Alright, so I've passed top dead centre. Now this will take you a little while to accomplish. Now remember, this is a two-man job. I'm doing this all on my own because I've got the engine here, but when you're doing this as a friend, one of you will have to be turning it and the other guy will have to be feeling it, okay, feeling that rod. So let's see what's happening here. Now I'm finding it very hard to feel it because I haven't braced my hand somewhere. So when you're doing this, you really need to brace your hand to get a positive feel of the end of that rod. So here we go. Oh, that's definitely coming up. And now it's going down. I can feel it definitely swinging downwards. That's going down again, so I've passed the point. Now you might need to rock this backwards and forwards a few times and get the average. And thinking I'm very, very close there. I think I'll call that top dead centre. I think I've gone past it and back a few times and see how we've gone. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's just zoom the camera in there for you without edits. Okay, so there you have it. Okay, I've got that lined up perfectly, but I don't expect that you would get the same result by having two people do it in the manner that it has to be done. Oh well, look, what can I say? It is easier for me to do it here than it is in the car. And honest, I didn't cheat. I didn't look at the pulley when I was doing that. I was pure by feel. And you notice that I just couldn't get the feel for it until I rested my hand properly against the timing cover and got the feel for it. And then I could feel it going up and down, stopping, up and down and stopping. When I felt that I was in that stopping region, that's when I stopped. And then we focused the camera down there and it just happened to be spot on. Okay folks, MBS here. 2 decades later, after making this video, I think it's time to amend it just a little bit. Now I've chopped and changed it a little bit just to improve it and improve the quality, but there is a point in there that I came across, and that was when I mentioned valve interference. Alright, in the engine that's in this video, I've got no problem with valve interference. Now remember, that's when I turn the engine backwards from stopping at the bolt stopper. One valve actually opens. In an interference engine where you've got canted valves, the spark plug is very close to the valves when they open up, you can't use the bolt method. Alright, it's just not on. You will collide with one of the valves depending what top dead centre you're on at the time. So yeah, you'll have to use the touchy-feely rod method, which is great. That's a fantastic method. I've been using that all my career just for a quick check. Obviously, you know, when I'm tuning cars a lot, I've got to make sure the top dead centre mark is spot on. So I've always used the rod method. Very rarely did I ever use the stopper method. It's yeah, it was just preference. I got very, very good at the touchy-feely method, getting it within almost, well, you saw in the video, I got this one in 0, but that was using one hand to turn, one hand free. So, you know, it's when you're doing that in the car, of course, you're going to need 2 people, so it becomes pretty difficult to get that on absolute 0. However, it is a great method for just doing a quick check just before you throw your timing light on, especially if your pulley is a 2-piece pulley and it moves and it's moving. You'll need to check that quite regularly. So yeah, it's a great method, quick and easy. And that's all I really wanted to say. I just wanted to cover that interference in the engine, because obviously I can't cover your engine depending what you've got. I don't know what you've got. I'm only working on a Holden 6 engine, so yeah, look, if you're a Holden 6 owner, you can do exactly what I've done here. You won't have any interference problems whatsoever. Okay, that's it. Enough jibber jabber. I hope you enjoyed that movie, and I'll catch you in another one.